As revealed in Part 1, through information gathering, the police identified Thatch as the primary suspect. The police force immediately divided into teams and moved to the fields, believed to be where Thatch was working. As it turned out, Thatch's wife had not lied. It didn't take long for the task force to locate and apprehend him. Faced with the sudden arrival of investigators and dozens of armed officers, farmers working in nearby fields were shocked and frightened. Thatch was no exception. However, he showed no fear or intent to flee when the police approached and asked him to come ashore for questioning. When asked to provide specifics about his whereabouts on the night Du Tai Quan's family was murdered, Thatch froze, his face turning pale. She was murdered? Are you sure? How could that happen? Who would do this to Tai Quan? At that moment, the investigators themselves began to doubt their own conclusions. A suspect, instead of showing fear, panic, or an attempt to flee, was now asking them questions about the case. What is going on here? After calming down and hearing the police's explanation for their sudden presence, Thatch slumped to the ground, utterly devastated. He sincerely explained to the officers, on the night Du Tai Quan's family was murdered, I never left my village. I was at my neighbor's house, drinking and watching TV. Their entire family can vouch for me. The TV program we watched ended at 11 p.m. After that, I went home, slept with my wife, and went to work as usual the next morning. It wasn't until you showed up that I heard about this horrifying incident. After conducting their investigation, the officers confirmed that Thatch's statements were entirely true. There were no inconsistencies between his testimony and the accounts provided by witnesses. All the traits such as his appearance and physical build, especially the shoes found at Thatch's house, were merely coincidental similarities with the evidence left by the real suspect at the Duong family's crime scene. After being cleared of suspicion, Thatch sat down, looking dejected, and confided in the investigators. Earlier this year, I overheard some neighbors talking. They said that before Du Tai Quan married into the Duong family, she had been pregnant. She was so shameless, loose, and immoral. She even went down to the town to have the pregnancy terminated. It was disgusting for a woman like her. And that baby in her womb, if it wasn't mine, then whose could it have been? Learning this, Thatch was filled with anger, sorrow, and regret. Quan and I spent our entire youth together. We were born in the same village, grew up side by side. I can't even count how many times I got injured protecting her. But when she grew up, she listened to her grandfather and forgot all the promises she made to me, a poor young man from the same village. She chased after wealth and material comfort, marrying a weak, unremarkable physician like Duong Loi. Thatch admitted to the police that, at first, when he heard about Du Tai Quan aborting their child, he was furious. I confronted her many times at her clothing shop, demanding answers. But she always avoided me. Once, she even called the local police, and I ended up being detained for several days before being released. Eventually, I came to realize that a woman like Du Tai Quan wasn't worth it. I had a wife, 2 young children, so I gave up on seeking revenge. It seemed as though the case that had shaken the mountainous region had found its final missing piece, but the investigators had completely failed. The funeral of the Duong family was held in an atmosphere heavy with sorrow and despair. All the villagers and distant relatives of the Duong family attended the ceremony. The tears of grief, the heart-wrenching cries, left even the investigators present sighing heavily. A family of 7, living virtuously and simply, devoted to healing and saving lives. 3 innocent, naive children now lying cold amidst the incense smoke. The emotions of the investigators handling this case were indescribable. At the funeral, kneeling and sobbing beside the coffins of Duong Kiet's 2 daughters was a strange woman. She didn't seem to be from Bac village. Her outfit looked unique, the uniform of a sanitation worker in Haidong City. One investigator, curious, asked the village head nearby, who explained, that's Duong Kiet's ex-wife. Her name is La Tan. After divorcing him, Tan moved to the city for work. She only occasionally returned to visit her 2 young daughters during holidays or Tet. I think she hasn't remarried since the divorce. Those two, they parted ways over some minor disagreements. But looking back, it might have been fate. If they hadn't divorced, there would be 8 coffins here today. Asterisk asterisk. After waiting for the funeral to conclude, the investigators approached Latan, hoping to uncover more clues about this special case. Based on their assessment, Latan was the only surviving member of the Duong family. Though divorced and living elsewhere, her nearly 10 years as a daughter-in-law of the Duong family must have given her insight into many valuable details. When approached and informed by the police, Latan, pale and haggard, leaned against the wall for a moment to regain her composure before speaking. It's very likely that the root of all this stems from Du Tai Quan. She continued. Back when she first married into the Duong family, Du Tai Quan was very obedient and respectful to everyone. Du Tai Quan cheerfully took on all the chores, cooking, cleaning, helping with planting and drying herbs, or weeding around the house. Everyone in the family adored her. But it seems that all of this was just an act she put on. As soon as her father-in-law passed away and the inheritance was divided between Duong Kiet and Duong Loi, Du Tai Quan changed drastically. First, she insisted on bringing her grandfather to live with them. To be fair, the old man was already very frail, so the family gladly accepted Du Tai Quan's request. But things didn't stop there. She demanded that Duong Loi invest capital for her to start a business, complaining that life in Vbac village was too boring and held no future. Even though, after the passing of his father, Duong Loi never required his wife to lift a finger, only asking her to stay home and handle the household. But Du Tai Quan nagged and complained, eventually forcing Duong Loi to agree to invest in a clothing shop for her in town, just as she wanted. Not stopping there, Du Tai Quan often visited Latan's house. She constantly criticized Duong Loi, saying he lacked business acumen and was weak and pale. She even brazenly compared Duong Loi to his brother Duong Kiet, coquettishly saying to Latan, "If only Duong Loi were even half as good as his brother." This left Latan with a deep dislike for Du Tai Quan. After her clothing shop was completed, Du Tai Quan often stayed in town, sometimes for an entire week before returning to visit her husband. Meanwhile, Duong Loi had to juggle his work as a physician while also taking care of her grandfather. One day, Latan visited Du Tai Quan's clothing shop to buy some clothes for her 2 daughters. To her shock, she discovered Du Tai Quan having an affair with a man in the shop's private room. Caught in the act, Du Tai Quan hurriedly opened the back door to let her lover escape. But Du Tai Quan's reaction could not fool Latan. As a married woman herself, Latan completely understood why Du Tai Quan behaved that way. Even though Duong Loi might have been lacking in certain aspects, he always tried his best to care for the family's happiness. Du Tai Quan knelt before Latan, begging her for another chance. She promised that she would never do anything wrong again. Latan was in a difficult position, but in the end, to preserve the family's happiness, she chose to trust her sister-in-law and keep the secret. However, as time went on, Latan grew more and more disappointed with Du Tai Quan's behavior. She stayed at the clothing store in town, rarely returning to Vbac village, leaving her husband and grandfather to struggle with medicine and patient care. Feeling her sister-in-law was irresponsible, Latan decided to reveal the truth and warn Duong Loi about his wife's infidelity. Upon hearing Latan's story, Duong Loi flew into a rage. He demanded that Du Tai Quan's grandfather accompany him to the clothing store to settle the matter once and for all. As Latan had described, the shameless and filthy scene involving Du Tai Quan was caught red-handed again, this time by her husband and her grandfather. Shockingly, Du Tai Quan twisted the narrative, claiming that she had been raped and threatened by the man, leaving her with no choice but to endure it. To prove her innocence to Duong Loi, she even demanded that he go to the police and report the incident for an investigation. Seeing how resolute his wife was, Duong Loi ultimately believed her. Surprisingly, after thorough investigation, the police caught the man who had an affair with Du Tai Quan and sentenced him to 3 years in prison. The reason why no one in Vbac village knew about this incident was because the Duong family chose to keep it a secret, out of pride and to protect their reputation. Latan, for revealing this truth, was accused by Du Tai Quan, who claimed that she intentionally made up the story to destroy her brother-in-law's family. Duong Kiet, who was coarse and uneducated, believed Du Tai Quan's accusations. As a result, La Tan and Duong Kiet's relationship deteriorated, leading to their divorce and separation. The man who had an affair with Du Tai Quan was identified as Keen Vin Min. After serving his sentence for rape, as accused by Du Tai Quan, Min had only been out of prison for about a year. Currently, Min was living with his wife and children, about 15 kilometers away from the Duong family's home. With this critical information, the police immediately headed to Keen Vin Min's house to investigate. However, upon arrival, Min was not at home. Only 2 children playing in the yard were present. When the investigators asked them questions, the kids happily let them in and explained that their parents had gone to the mountains to gather firewood early that morning. Usually, they wouldn't return home until late afternoon. From conversations with the neighbors around Keen Vin Min's house, the police noted a clear sense of discomfort and reluctance among the locals. No one wanted to associate with Min's family because of the crime of rape that he had committed in the past. People preferred to keep their distance from someone who had just been released from prison. Currently, the couple made their living by burning firewood and selling charcoal to merchants in the local market. Every day, Keen Vin Min and his wife would head to the mountains early in the morning, returning home only by late afternoon. At night, they would busy themselves at the large charcoal kiln located behind their house. While waiting for the suspect to return, some investigators explored the area around Min's house. Indeed, they found a large charcoal kiln set up behind the house. However, a crucial clue was discovered at the entrance of the extinguished kiln: a half-burned shoe lying haphazardly outside. Upon closer examination, the shoe matched the type of work footwear, with the sole matching the tread marks found at the crime scenes. Most notably, the sole of the shoe was relatively new, and there were traces of what appeared to be dried blood on its underside. Given the difficult financial circumstances of Keen Vin Min's family, there was no reasonable explanation for burning such a new shoe. Without delay, police mobilized forces to the base of the mountain to apprehend the suspect. Surprisingly, when the police arrived, they spotted Min and his wife descending the mountain path. The moment he saw the police, Keen Vin Min threw down the heavy bundle of firewood he was carrying and bolted. His wife, walking just behind him, was completely shocked by his sudden reaction. Thanks to prior planning and preparation, the special task force quickly intercepted and subdued the suspect. Faced with sharp questioning and meticulously constructed arguments from investigators, Keen Vin Min finally bowed his head and confessed to all his heinous crimes. Keen Vin Min admitted to the police that he and Du Tai Quan began their acquaintance and illicit relationship shortly after she opened her clothing store in the town. Min was also one of the construction workers involved in building Du Tai Quan's clothing store. On several occasions, seeing the beautiful store owner personally come down to supervise and inspect the construction progress, Min boldly made flirtatious remarks. He assumed that a wealthy and stunningly beautiful woman like Du Tai Quan wouldn't pay attention to a coarse, dirty laborer like him. But Du Tai Quan was different. She cheerfully joked and laughed with everyone. As Min worked on the scaffolding, he occasionally caught Du Tai Quan stealing glances at him. Over time, their conversations became more open and intimate. Gradually, Min realized that the young and attractive store owner treated him very differently. Reflecting on it, Keen Vin Min also came to the conclusion that he was the most handsome among the group of construction workers. After the project was completed and handed over, Du Tai Quan generously hosted a celebration meal to thank the workers for finishing ahead of schedule. Oddly, for that meal, she was the only one who went shopping and prepared everything herself. When the dinner ended, all the other workers received their wages and happily left, but Du Tai Quan didn't mention anything about Keen Vin Min's payment. After everyone had left, Min approached her to ask about it. Du Tai Quan candidly confessed that she was very attracted to his masculinity. Eventually, under the influence of alcohol and the stifling atmosphere, a married man and a newlywed woman found themselves in each other's arms. From that point forward, Min and Quan established a secret, illicit relationship. However, the despicable actions of this adulterous couple were eventually exposed. After being caught by La Tan, Du Tai Quan was terrified and demanded that Min end their relationship immediately. Keen Vin Min, being in a weaker position, reluctantly agreed. Instead of visiting his mistress's store every day to freeload and leech off her money, Min had to return to his grueling and filthy job as a construction worker, a life he had escaped for the past 6 months. Min thought that the beautiful Du Tai Quan had truly left him. But unexpectedly, just 1 month later, Du Tai Quan sought him out. She apologized to her lover sincerely, explaining that breaking off the relationship was purely out of necessity. Overjoyed, Keen Vin Min eagerly accepted her apology. But another major incident occurred. This time, the people who discovered their affair were not Latan, but rather Du Tai Quan's grandfather and her husband, Duong Loi. When Duong Loi burst into the store, Min quickly slipped out the back door and fled frantically. However, in his haste, he left behind his shirt at Du Tai Quan's store. To clear her name, Du Tai Quan shifted all the blame onto Keen Vin Min. She and her husband went to the police to report that Min had raped and assaulted her. The evidence Du Tai Quan presented was the shirt Min had left behind at the store. Even more despicably, the scratch marks on Min's chest and back, from their previous trysts, were falsely claimed by Du Tai Quan to be the result of her resisting his attack. Although Keen Vin Min pleaded for his innocence and explained himself repeatedly, the irrefutable evidence against him led to his conviction of 5 years in prison for his despicable actions. This incident shattered Min's entire family. Neighbors who once greeted them with smiles now looked at Min's family with contempt, disdain, insults, and isolation. During his time in prison, the punishment for being labeled a rapist was far from light. Day and night, Min endured beatings and harsh, disciplinary measures imposed by fellow inmates. After his release and return to his family, Min believed that time would erase his past mistakes, but instead, the villagers' disdain and ostracization intensified. His criminal record, marred by a rape conviction, made it impossible for Min to find any decent, honorable job. As a result, he was forced to labor tirelessly, gathering firewood in the mountains and producing charcoal for sale. The breaking point of Min's growing hatred towards the Du family came when his young daughter was bullied by her peers because her father was a convicted rapist. When Min went to the school to demand an explanation, not only was he denied any resolution, but the teacher even suggested that Min transfer his daughter to another school. The teacher explained that having Min's daughter in the school could negatively impact the other students, as the parents of her classmates had collectively agreed that they didn't want their children to share a classroom with a child from such a morally questionable family. Hearing these words, Min's hatred grew even larger. He turned to alcohol to ease the stress and pressure in his life, but with every drink, his hatred only deepened into uncontrollable rage. Finally, to end his despair and perceived injustice, Min decided to drag everyone down with him, targeting those he believed had caused his life to spiral into ruin. After many days of observing Du Tai Quan's clothing store and learning everything about her family and relationships, on the evening of December 25, 1990, Min armed himself with his woodcutting axe and headed to the Duong family's house. He hid outside, waiting until all the neighboring households had fallen into deep sleep, before breaking into the house and committing his heinous crimes with cold-blooded brutality. As for why the body of Du Tai Quan's grandfather was found in the yard, Min recounted. On the night of the crime, the elderly man was sleeping in the rear building of the house. Perhaps he realized someone had broken in and ran out into the yard to call for help. However, as an elderly man already at the end of his life, he was no match for someone as consumed by hatred as Min. After completing his first attack at Duong Loi's house, Min then moved on to Duong Kiet's household. Min explained that he targeted them because he wanted to eliminate every trace. Through his observations, Min learned that the entire Duong family was complicit in covering up Du Tai Quan's betrayal and agreeing to frame him for a crime he didn't commit. The villagers of V Bac were completely unaware of the shameful truth about Du Tai Quan. After brutally murdering Duong Kiet and his 3 children, Min quickly left the scene and returned home to his wife and children, as though nothing had happened. Little did he know, the police would investigate and track him down so quickly. Thus, Keen Vin Min carried out a massacre, taking the lives of 7 innocent people. Of course, he fully understood that death would be the ultimate price he had to pay. Unexpectedly, despite the extreme poverty of his family, Keen Vin Min's wife still managed to borrow enough money to hire a lawyer to defend him. However, due to Min's reckless, cold-blooded behavior and the devastating consequences he caused, even the lawyer could do nothing to save this crazed killer. When the death sentence was announced at the preliminary trial, Keen Vin Min's wife collapsed in the courtroom. It was clear that she still deeply loved him, despite all that he had done. As Keen Vin Min was being escorted out of the courtroom, he turned back and shouted to his wife, "Stop spending money on me. Save it to take care of the children. Don't bother taking my body back or holding a funeral for me." The crux of this case is that if there hadn't been an affair between Keen Vin Min and Du Tai Quan in the first place, this tragic story of two families losing 8 lives might never have happened. Keen Vin Min is undoubtedly the most guilty. However, Du Tai Quan was the true root of this tragedy. Crime Decoded. Thanks all of you for tuning in. Please leave your thoughts in the comment section below and let us know what you think. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to follow and listen to more shocking cases in upcoming episodes. Thank you all.